Goeiedag, good day, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world.
I've been looking around for salvation. I've been looking around for the truth. All around me I see frustration, and I looked all over till I found you. I sit and listen to your stories, and you're telling me, please don't worry. A lot in this world you should know, and love in life is where you should go. If you're looking for somewhere to go, if you're looking for someone to know, if you're looking for someone to guide you, then love in life will guide you. I know that life outside is so hard. There's a lot of things that can tear you apart. Sometimes feel lonely, but remember you're not the one and only. There's always someone there to help you, a helping hand to pull you through. There's only one thing you should do. Take my hand and join the Love and Life crew.
Hi Dawie, thank you so much for inviting me to your house.
Scott, you are very welcome, very nice having you here. So
Fabulous.
In person.
Yeah, absolutely, in person in South Africa.
Yeah, it's always better in person.
Absolutely. And we're going to be talking about the future of money, not just in South Africa.
Looking forward.
Cool, okay. There are two schools of thought going forward. And it's interesting when we look at the war in Ukraine, where the Rothschilds wrote to the Prime Minister, not Rishi Sunak, but to Boris Johnson, and said, hey, this war in Ukraine could stop our aims of having a new world order. And that letter was actually published. It's actually up there and you can actually see it. And the reason he said that was because Russia is, like China, And a lot of the BRICS nations, I think South Africa is not one of them, but a lot of the BRICS nations are looking at moving their money or their currency into commodity-based. So in other words, it's not like the fiat system where it's debt-based, it's going to be backed by gold or oil, or it's going to be backed by something. Now, if you look at the West, you look at particular the USA, back in 1972, I think it was, where Henry Kissinger flew over to Saudi Arabia, had a meeting with the king, and said, hey, let's do a petrodollar, you only accept US dollars, and that as a result of that, OPEC agreed to this, and it became basically the global currency. Now what's happening right now, today, is Saudi Arabia and Iran are becoming pally as a result of China getting involved, and Saudi Arabia is now saying they will accept other currencies for their oil, which is taking away the strength that underwrote the US dollar as a global currency.
Sure.
Now, you've got these two schools again I'm talking about. One which is the fiat system, which is basically what the US dollar is based on, which is this fractional reserve. It's all based on debt. And then you've got countries like Russia and China, which are saying, hey, we're going to do it differently. We're going to back our currencies by commodities, which is real assets. Now, let's look at those two different ideas. What's your thoughts on which one's going to work?
A couple of things that there's a few words that you've used here. I just want to understand it. One is the New World Order.
Yeah.
Now, I can promise you, Xi Jinping, he's got his own idea.
Absolutely.
Of what the New World Order should be. And in fact, he's mentioned that many times. He said that China should have its rightful place in the world. That it should be unified and we have to take over Taiwan. And obviously, he's got this grandiose ideas of what China's position should be in the world. And perhaps rightfully so. So that's his idea. Putin, for example, his idea is that he thinks that the collapse of the Soviet Union was the biggest disaster in the 1900s, and we somehow have to revive the Soviet Union. That's his idea of the New World Order. The New World Order of the Americans is something else, and the Europeans is something else, and they all have an idea of what the New World Order should look like. There's no bunch of people. I'm sure there are a lot of groups of people everywhere trying to achieve their own version of what they think the New World Order should look like. So it doesn't mean anything, this New World Order.
We'll come back to that.
Yeah, well, who's this New World Order?
We'll come back to that shortly. Let's talk about these two different...
Let's look at the currency things. Then you say, all right, in the case of the West, let's talk about money stuff. In the case of the West, we've got a fiat money system. We do not have the gold standard anymore. It's based on a fractional reserve system. Money is created out of nothing by central banks, and we know the whole money creation process. Yes. So now the BRICS countries, or the New World Order, or some grouping somewhere, they're going to start their own currency, and they're going to blow the American dollar out of the water, because, and we can talk about the US dollar, whether that will remain the dominant currency or not, and it will remain the dominant currency for a long time still. And I've got very good reasons why I say so. But let's imagine there's a new bunch of a new gang somewhere. They call themselves the Soaring Eagles. They're going to start their own currency, and they're going to have it backed by some sort of commodity. So let's call them the BRICS countries, or let's call them Russia and China and Iran and Venezuela or whatever. So what is this thing that's going to back the currency? Can you tell me an example of what it can be potentially?
Sure.
Like what?
It could be gold.
Okay, let's use gold as an example. So we're going to create a new currency. We call it give it a name, the Eastern dollar, argument's sake, or the East Bloc or dollar,
the gold dollar.
The gold dollar.
Yeah.
So it's backed by gold.
Yeah.
What does it mean to be backed by gold? It must mean that if I take my Eastern dollars to whoever the central bank is going to be, because that's another big question.
Yeah.
Who's going to be the central bank issuing this? Is it going to be the Chinese one? Is it going to be the Russian one? Is it going to be Maduro that's going to issue this? Is it going to be the Ayatollah issuing this? Or is it going to be the Sheikh issuing it? That's a big question. But let's assume there's one central bank issuing this new Eastern dollar or whatever, backed by gold. So I take these Eastern dollars. Will I now be able to go to this central bank, whoever that is, and exchange my dollar for gold?
Well, that was the idea with the US dollar pre-1931.
Yes, that was. I'm asking you now.
Yeah.
Because these new guys, this new world order thing that you are sort of talking about, they're going to have a commodity-based currency. So this kind of commodity can be gold, or it can be, perhaps,
It might be oil.
so can I then go my dollar to this central bank and say, give me 1 barrel of oil?
Well, I think your dollar wouldn't get you a barrel of oil.
What will it give me? What will it give me? 5 liters of oil or whatever.
Well,
Just think about the
oil prices.
Because a real asset-backed currency means, and it meant in the past, I can actually take my
Absolutely.
to the central bank and get my piece of gold.
Yeah.
So this new one that you're talking about, will I be able to go to this, whoever this is, to the Ayatollah central bank and say, here's my dollar,
Apparently, yes.
give me my gold.
Yeah.
So where are they going to get this gold?
Well, look, I'm just telling you what the two concepts
I'm
are.
just telling you it's unpractical.
Well,
It's not going to happen. They don't have enough gold. We can't do it with oil. You're going to walk around with 5 liters cans of oil trying to get your oil back in your asset-based currency.
let me tell you something, Dawie. It might sound unfeasible, but I would rather have something that was tangible, that I could go and take my dollar and get something back,
Like what?
as opposed to carrying someone else's debt, which is what you've got with the current system.
But listen to what you're saying, Scott.
Yeah.
So I want something tangible, something I can touch, I can get. Like what?
Gold?
Like gold.
Silver?
So will this new central bank have a lot of gold?
Yeah.
But they don't have that.
Well, apparently, and I'm only working to what I've heard.
Yes.
China has actually got twice as much gold as publicly revealed.
They probably have.
And you know, in tonnage. That's a huge amount of gold.
And let's even assume that the Chinese have enough gold.
Yeah.
They've got from now on, the renminbi will be gold backed. 1-to-1, argument's sake.
Yeah.
So I can go to the Chinese, and I can do that in practice. So I can go to the Chinese central bank, say, here is my renminbi, give me my piece of gold. Do you think the central bank in China will give me that piece of gold?
Well, I guess not if you've taken one renminbi, but if you've taken, say, 10,000,
10 million,
then they would, then they would, yes.
No, they will not.
Why not?
Because that is where their power is. Central banks don't give up their gold. They say it is completely convertible into gold, but they never give up the gold. They never gave up the gold in the past. It is there. It's a sort of symbolic thing.
So why did Nixon go back to 1971? Why did Nixon say we're going off the gold standard because everybody wants the gold?
In practical terms, what happened? At Fort Knox, they have these little cages with gold, physical gold of the various countries in there. So South Africa's got a little cage with a couple of gold bars there. Literally. This is how it worked.
Yeah.
And the next to South Africa is Belgium with a couple of gold bars in it. And then the other various countries. And America typically...
But when we talk about a couple, it might be a couple hundred tons of gold.
Yeah, but even a couple of 100 tons is not a lot of gold.
I get it, yeah.
Okay, but that's what it looked like in practice.
Yeah.
So you had these cages with the various countries. And America looked after the gold of all these countries. And then they had fixed exchange rates between, say, the drachma and the dollar, or the rand in the dollar, or the pound in the dollar, or the mark in the dollar, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
And the countries will trade with one another.
Yeah.
And in this trading, because the exchange rates were fixed, exchange rates did not change.
Not like
not
today.
much. Not much. Anyway, sometimes it happened. But the idea was to have fixed exchange rates. So South Africa will export more to America than what they will export to us. So they will owe us more money. And eventually, over time, we will go to the Americans and say, listen, you guys, you owe us now. Take some of your gold in your cage and put it in our cage. And that's what they've done. Exactly that. So the Americans started losing out because they were running out, low on gold. Because they were running all these deficits with the rest of the world, and their pile of gold was getting lower and lower and lower because exchange rates were fixed. Then Richard Nixon said, listen, this pile of gold is getting quite small now. I'm not going to give you my gold anymore. But what I am going to do, I'm going to break the exchange rate between currencies. So from now on, the dollar will fall in value, which will make my exports more competitive. And while I will be owing you money at the end of the month, now because I'm going to export more in dollar terms to you, I'm going to owe you nothing. I'm not going to give you gold anymore. That's what it means to step off the gold standard.
Now, that's where things went pear-shaped.
Of course it went pear-shaped.
Because what happened then, pre-1971, because the gold was there and, as you say, countries traded it, so gold still played a pivotal role when it came to debt. But post-1971, basically, because there was nothing backing fiat money, central banks could just print the shit.
Yes, and they did that.
And look what happened.
We saw inflation. Yeah. That's exactly the reason.
Yeah, and that's why inflation today is out of control.
Yes, it's not out of control completely, but the benefit is, of course you're right, because there's nothing limiting how much central banks can create base money. In the past, they were limited by how much gold they had to create more base money.
That's the point.
Of course, that's the point. Yeah. Now there's no limit. They can create more and more money. And that's the reason why we have something called inflation targets in most countries in the world.
I want to get back to Russia and the Ukraine war, because this to me really sums up my argument that having a commodity-based currency works. And that is because when the Ukraine war happened on the 24th of February last year, and America basically joined sides with Ukraine, the ruble went down by about 50% in value. And then Putin said, we're going to back the ruble by commodities.
No, that's not true.
Well, he said gold, and the ruble just went back.
No, that's very untrue.
All right, tell me what
happened. Yeah. Now, I'm not going to try to pronounce her name, the Central Bank of Russia.
Yeah.
No, I'm not going to even try to pronounce her name. Okay. But I can tell you she is absolutely brilliant, the Central Bank of Russia.
Right.
It's a woman. And what she done, of course, suddenly the ruble did collapse, you're absolutely right. But what she done immediately, not only her, but some of the other authorities in Russia as well, she immediately increased interest rates dramatically in Russia. There was a sharp increase in interest rates in Russia. Now, what happens if you increase interest rates? It means that you make your currency very attractive because you pay a very high return interest on your currency. So she sharply increased interest rates in Russia, firstly. Secondly, they introduced all sort of foreign exchange regulations on currencies in Russia, which means basically that if I want to take my money out of Russia, I couldn't. It became much more difficult to take my money out of. So if I had a dollar deposit at a bank in Moscow, for example, I was not allowed to take it out. And in fact, still even today, and I know from practical experience, from personal experience.
You got it stuck there.
And personal experience, I'm married to a Russian girl, and her mother, I've sent her mother $1,000. She cannot take the $1,000 out of the bank.
Wow.
She can only take the rubles. So that's another example of foreign exchange regulations.
Yeah.
Apart from that, if you own a McDonald's, for example, in Moscow, and you want to sell it now, government has taken over that decision for you, and they tell you, listen, you can sell it, and I will pay you dollars you want, but I'm only going to pay half of that. So your $100 million operation in Moscow, I will give you $50 million.
Yeah.
Take it or leave it. And many people say, okay, I'll take it.
Yeah.
So all these sort of measures, and they closed the various financial markets, like the capital market and the equity markets and all that. Initially, they're gradually opening it up. So the reason why the dollar strengthened up is because of high interest rates and a lot of foreign exchange regulations that they've implemented in Russia and all sort of other shenanigans. That's the reason. And nothing to do with being gold-backed or that sort of nonsense. Yeah. If you take your dollar today to the central bank in Moscow, do you think they're going to give you dollars or gold? They're not going to give you gold.
Yeah, well,
that's not backed by dollars.
Let's see what happens with the Russian ruble in the future and with the Chinese renminbi. But I want to turn now to something which we know is going to happen, which is this new PayShap digital currency that's coming into South Africa. They've got one coming into the US, which is called FedNow. Same thing. And it's rather like a foundation stone for programmable digital currencies.
Yes.
And people have no idea what that is. And there's a thing called a central bank digital currency. But before we get into that, I sent you a couple of links over the last few days about this ID 2020, which was first basically tabled. It was actually presented to the United Nations in 2018 by the Rockefellers and by Microsoft, which is Bill Gates, basically.
The bad guys.
The bad guys, yeah. The one world government guys, okay? This is where we part ways. We have a schism between us here in this thing. But, okay, so basically, Gates and Rockefeller came up with this idea of a digital idea suggesting that for over 2 billion people who have no chance of having any form of identity that they can use for banking and all the important things that us rich guys can do, it would give them an opportunity to have an individual identity where they could actually do the stuff that we can do day by day. So that was their excuse for bringing in ID 2020. Come COVID-19, another conspiracy theory. They bring in this COVID or vaccine wallet where, you know, if you've got your vaccine, then you can do stuff because you present your phone and you put your QR code up there and you can go to the theatre, you can go to a sporting venue, you can do whatever you like. But if you're unvaxxed, it's like you're in the naughty box because you haven't followed the rules according to the government. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is because at ID 2020, and I know you are fervently against the idea that there is some conspiracy happening, which is where, as I say,
there are many conspiracies.
Well, we'll have to talk about the World Economic Forum another time. But coming back to the digital ID.
Yes.
Okay, now, the digital ID is for it to work. You've got to have fingerprints, you've got to have iris scans, you've got to have all these different things so that you are uniquely you in that particular digital ID. And the whole basis of that is once you've got that, you can then start using things like PayShap because you've basically got an identity that cannot be forged, like with identity theft and stuff like that. This is the whole basis of this new form of money that they're talking about. But there is a real sting in the tail, and this is where I want your thoughts on this. And that is because this new PayShap or FedNow or Australia doing the same thing, it's basically stage one of a central bank digital currency which is programmable, which can then track you, trace you, monitor every single transaction you make. It gets rid of cash. We don't have cash anymore. All we have is this digital ID, and that's how you actually do transactions in the future. Don't you think that's a very dangerous way for people to go when it comes to liberties?
Yeah, it makes me think of 1984 kind of stuff, you know,
Yeah.
George Orwell and the authorities on steroids. I believe, and I really do believe, is that the authorities, politicians, always want to control us. I think, on that base, I think we all know that. It's nothing new to that. They want to control us. They want us to think in a certain manner. They want us to do certain things. They think they know what is best for us. And they want us to use our grants that we get from government to buy bread and not to buy brandy, as an example. So politicians think they are sort of morally advanced and they're in a much better position to decide for us. And they always try to make laws and rules and kind of stuff to give more power to them so that they can tell us what is good for us. We know that is not the case because we know what is good for us, not somebody else. And this is just another example of what is probably, and it's probably going to happen. As it is, central banks, for example, today, are basically monopolies. They are relatively new animals. And central banks are controlling money, basically, and we are not allowed to compete with central banks. So we've lost a lot of that liberty to create our own currencies and to create that freedom to create our own currencies. We've lost that already. We're also living in countries in the world today where you are forced to pay taxes. Whether you like it or not, hasn't always been the case. The governments or states played a much smaller role in the economy in the past than what they're doing today. But the reason why that has happened is because in many instances it worked out not too badly for us. The state being bigger, for example, and I hate bureaucrats, I hate politicians, I hate ineptocrats. They're far too big and far too powerful, but some things worked out well because of the way that we organize our societies today. There's always a danger that they want to take too much power and that eventually it's not going to be good for us. So let's look at some things like, for example, the so-called credit system, the social credit system. Now the Chinese, they have that already. A social credit system is something that we already have. If you are a criminal and you've got a criminal record, and you want to get a job somewhere, they're going to ask you if you've got a criminal record, and then they can go to the police station, see you've got a criminal record. I'm not going to employ you because you're a criminal, for example. That is nothing but a social credit system, in a way. How far should it go? Should it include, for example, me saying something bad about government on Facebook? And because of that, I also get some negative points behind my name. Should it? I think you and I will agree it should not include that. But in practice, that is in fact what is happening in certain countries. Like, for example, in China. If you say bad things about government, you've got a criminal record, and on top of that, now you've got these negative points, so you get a negative, and you can't buy a plane ticket, for example, because you've got this negative points. You have to be a good citizen, not a bad citizen. You're a bad guy. That is wrong. But it's there already, and you don't need digital currencies for that to be there. It is there already. I mean, there are many crimes that are criminal, which in my view is not a criminal, shouldn't be a crime. Like, for example, tax evasion, which is criminal. But in as far as I'm concerned, evading tax is not a criminal act. It shouldn't be a criminal act. Because if the politicians want to take money from me and they give me a service, I'm prepared to pay for that. But you can't take my money if I don't get anything in return for that. But that is a criminal act. And if you go to the police and say, I'm a tax evader, I'm a criminal, and somebody else is not going to employ me, for example. So it's nothing new. It's slightly more sophisticated, yes. So politicians are going to say, you said something bad about us, you listened to bad music, or you read something, a naughty book, or whatever the case may be. I'm going to put the negative mark behind your name, and I'm going to punish you in one way or the other. And that's nothing new. It's been happening for ages. And it's our responsibility as a real freedom fighters to prevent that.
Now it'll actually be tied up with your wallet.
And now we have a very amazing technology. And this is the blockchain technology and everything that goes with that, which will give an even more power in the hands of the authorities, whereby they will check your credit score or check your social score, which consists of your criminal record, as well as the bad things you send to government, as well as the bad books you've read, and as well as the bad movies you watch, and the bad things you said on Facebook. All of those sort of things will be weighed in a certain manner, and they're going to say, this is a bad guy. I'm going to give him a wallet, central bank digital currency, but I'm going to punish him a little bit. His wallet will not be allowed to buy books anymore.
Well, in China, you're not allowed to use public transport.
Or buy whatever. So that's the danger. So be aware of that. But it's nothing new. It's a slightly different version of something that's existed all along.
Let me give you a few facts that basically add weight to the suggestion that there is a one world government in waiting. I can see you've got that cynical smile on your face. Okay, now, you know that in Britain, you had a prime minister who lasted about 30 days after Boris Johnson left. I've forgotten what the lady's name was, Tina or something like that. But then you had Rishi Sunak, who basically was not a politician until about 3 or 4 years ago. Okay, so he's a new boy, and all of a sudden he's the prime minister in the United Kingdom. Now, isn't it really coincidental that his father-in-law is a fellow by the name of Mercy, and he owns a company called Infosys. Okay, now Infosys is a partner in the World Economic Forum. So the father-in-law of the Prime Minister of the UK is a partner in the World Economic Forum. Now, you can't tell me that they don't have chats, because, I mean,
Sure.
his daughter talks about what the dad's doing and all this sort of stuff. And Dad has got a proposal before the World Economic Forum to bring out a global social credit system tied up with a central bank digital
Sure.
currency.
I don't know if that's the case, but I won't be surprised.
Yeah, but the point I'm trying to make is, isn't it interesting how the people who get the top jobs in politics are all tied up with the World Economic Forum one way or the other? And I can give you some examples. Justin Trudeau in Canada, young global leader, World Economic Forum. Jacinda Ardern, Prime Minister of New Zealand, who's just resigned, young global leader, World Economic Forum. Greg Hunt, the Australian Health Minister during COVID, used to be the Director of Strategy at the World Economic Forum in the early 2000s. You take Macron, young global leader. You can literally go around the world. The new guy in Brazil, tied up with the World Economic Forum.
Lula.
Yeah, Lula. Yeah, and Bolsonaro, who was a very popular president of Brazil, somehow got kicked out. And you saw what happened in the last few months regarding the population, regarding him being kicked out. But the point I'm trying to make here is that the people who are heading up governments today have one common denominator, and that is their association with the World Economic Forum. Now, in January every year, most leaders of most countries go to a place called Davos in Switzerland, and they go and basically sit down and have think tanks and talk about what's going to happen. And right at the very start of this interview we had, you talked about how businesses are getting involved where government used to be involved. Now, if you look at Klaus Schwab, who heads up the World Economic Forum, if you read his book called The Great Reset, he talks in there about two critical strategies for a one world government. One is called public-private partnerships, which is where what the government used to do is taken over by private enterprise, and that's where it becomes a public-private partnership. And that's the one big strategy for a one world government. And the second one is what they call stakeholders. The stakeholders are the very wealthy people, like Bill Gates, George Soros, these guys who basically, BlackRock, Vanguard, these hugely big investment companies who are going to be like the kings and queens of this one world government through public-private partnerships in at a government level running things. So the actual democratic side might be just like it is today, where you've got lobby groups who basically run your government. You've got things that are happening behind the scenes that people are not aware of. So my question here is that, again, I saw your cynical smile when I started talking about a one world government. Don't you think it's rather strange that the people right at the top have that same common denominator, that they've somehow shot up to the top and landed up in these positions when they're so tied up with Klaus Schwab and basically the one world government system?
Correct me here, but Tsar Nicholas was married to Catherine? No. Catherine the Great was his grandmother, I think. If I'm not mistaken. But Catherine the Great, correct me here, I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah.
But she was closely related to Queen Victoria.
She was?
Yes.
Yeah.
They're all related.
And not only that, but in Germany, I'll tell you the ultimate irony. Queen Victoria gave her younger sister, who was actually, if she wasn't the queen in Germany, she was certainly a princess in Germany, gave her, you've just climbed up Mount Kilimanjaro. Now, you know how Mount Kilimanjaro, there's like this lump around the border between Tanzania and Kenya? Did you know that Mount Kilimanjaro used to be part of Kenya? Did you know that?
No, I didn't know.
It changed in the 1870s because Queen Victoria gave Mount Kilimanjaro to her sister in Germany And that's when the border changed, so that Mount Kilimanjaro is now part of
It was
Tanzania.
called Tanganyika.
Yeah, Tanganyika.
Okay, but the point I want to make is that, so you've just described what we've been having all along for centuries.
Yeah.
So, but that's what happened when powerful people talk to powerful people and they marry their kids off to other powerful people and they establish all sort of things. It's been happening all along. So what's this new thing about Charles Schwab and the New World Order and the Prime Minister of England?
Have you heard about eating crickets and grubs and worms and all that sort of stuff?
It's a wonderful new technology.
Really? Of course it is. I can tell you now, I'm not going to buy into that.
Well, you don't have to.
Yeah.
But the reality is, if they be a little bit scientific about these things, but crickets or insects, their fat content is significantly lower than other forms of protein, and the protein.
But they also carry parasites. They're huge amount of parasites.
So does all other forms of protein as well. Fish, for example, or pork, or all these things that we eat. Chicken, they all can potentially carry parasites.
Yeah. Anyway. I just say that the idea that what they're doing is they're basically taking certain foods off the table, like steak, for the average man in the street, and they're saying now you can eat hamburgers which are made out of grubs.
But it's very expensive to farm with beef, and if you can your protein production, you can double it to 10 times or whatever. I don't know what it is.
We're getting way off the subject here, but I'm going to give you one more example. And Roodt, the guy who heads up the Netherlands.
I know him personally, by the way.
Okay. He is one of World Economic Forum's close partners.
No, he's probably one of these.
No, he is. He is. I'm telling you now.
Sure.
Yeah, if you don't personally ask him what he thinks of the World Economic Forum. And he's the guy who's closing down something like 30,000 farms in Holland because he says that the cattle are producing.
And he's just lost the election in the Netherlands.
Has he just lost it?
He's just lost it.
Bingo! I love that film.
To the new farmers, whatever, political party.
Great. Oh, that's great. That's great news. Well, that's democracy.
And they're going to start this new farming, whatever their name is. My son-in-law just sent me a message about this. They're going to start a new World Economic Forum. Because that's the nature of humankind. Don't look for all these conspiracies about every corner.
Yeah.
We do.
Anyway, look, we've been going for about 90 minutes, and it's been a really interesting, and as it always is, we tend to cross swords on certain things. And I still, in January next year, I want us to have another discussion about the World Economic Forum and, this whole one world government.
You've got a major issue about that.
I think that by this time next year, you'll be seeing some things happen.
Why didn't you cross swords with the Chinese Politburo?
Who?
The Chinese Politburo.
Who?
The Chinese.
Klaus Schwab.
The Chinese.
Yeah.
Because they all have their own idea of a new world order. As Xi Jinping he's in charge of the most powerful economy in the world, bigger than the US economy, by the way.
Yeah, I know.
So why are you not worried about him?
Well, I am, but the point is that this one world government has been basically in the background, in the shadows, for generations now.
Yes.
Yeah, and the great irony is that Zelensky in Ukraine and Putin in Russia are both young global leaders at the World Economic Forum. Isn't that interesting?
So it's not working out well for them.
It's not. Oh yeah, and okay. I'm going to just close off on this particular point. I sent you a couple of emails, and I talked about the Boston Consulting Group. Have you ever heard of that before?
Remind me of that.
Okay.
I want to talk about IDs, by the way. I just want to explain something to you that you're missing out on IDs.
Okay.
Identities. Yeah.
Okay, we'll get back to that after the Boston Consulting Group. Okay, back in 2018, just before COVID-19 struck, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation gave SAPRA...
Another bad people, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. They gave SAPRA, which are the government body that actually authorizes drugs that can be dispensed in South Africa. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation gave SAPRA 27 million rand to fix up their backlog of approving certain drugs and so on. And the whole basis of that was that a group called the Boston Consulting Group, which you can go look it up on the internet. The Boston Consulting Group were the consultants to actually sort this out for SAPRA. And 2 years later, what you had, of course, was a situation where we had COVID-19, and the COVID vax was immediately approved, and, you know, like it was in most countries around the world, in fact, all countries around the world. That was an experimental drug, so it wasn't actually an approved drug, which is quite extraordinary, seeing the way it's pushed. The same Boston Consulting Group, now remember, Microsoft are behind this new central bank digital currency, ID 2020, all that sort of stuff. The same Boston Consulting Group, based in Sandton, here in Gauteng, they're the ones who are doing the rollout of PayShap. They're actually behind the rollout of PayShap. Now, I bet you didn't know that.
No, you're telling me something I didn't realize, but I'm not so sure I believe that.
Okay, well, in the email I sent you, if you have a look, there are two PDFs linked. And one is to the Boston Consulting Group's PDF, where they talk about PayShap and their involvement in it. And the reason I'm saying this is because Microsoft are the ones who are actually remembering ID 2020 and, you know, the discussion there, digital ID and all this sort of stuff. They're the ones who are really pushing this. And they're using the same consultants who actually were involved in approving drugs in South Africa, who are now actually rolling out this PayShap. And the Boston Consulting Group are basically a partner with, guess who? The World Economic Forum. Any comments on that?
No, I don't know much about that. It could be that I know many people.
Yeah.
For example, I know people that do business and work for the South African Reserve Bank. Mm-hmm. I know them personally.
Yeah.
And guess what?
What?
They also go to the World Economic Forum.
I'm not surprised.
And I know this guy personally.
Look at
and
Patrice.
I can tell you, and I do business with him.
Yeah.
And I have never been to the World Economic Forum, by the way. But I've been to the World Bank meetings. I've been to the International Monetary Fund meetings, and I follow the World Economic Forum. And I know the South African Reserve Bank people working there quite well. There's no funny things going on there.
Well, I have to disagree.
I know.
Patrice Motsepe, he's on the board of the World Economic Forum.
Well, good for him. He's probably getting a very nice director's fee.
I'm sure he's getting a huge
I wouldn't
amount of
mind
connections.
being there.
Yeah. And you know that Ramaphosa is a young global leader for the World
He's a
Economic Forum.
useless leader.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they call him a leader. I can't.
Do you have a comment to make about Ramaphosa? Your thoughts?
I think he's not a leader. He's a consensus seeker. I have difficulty believing that he's actually a vertebrate.
He's got a backbone.
He hasn't got a backbone. No, he's really an exceptionally weak leader in South Africa. And I think what he's doing is led the ANC to its downfall. We're seeing today is the beginning of the end of the ANC, which is a good thing.
What do you think about Pala and that money?
There are too many open questions. I think the president should have resigned. Clearly, the president is allowed to have a lot of dollars, millions, apparently, I don't know how much. Well, I'm as an individual, I'm not allowed to have dollars. We have foreign exchange regulations. There are questions about taxes as well. So I'm afraid the answers I got is just not good enough. I think the president, there's something must have gone wrong there, something must have happened there, and clearly the president, different rules applies to him.
Right, now one last question before we go to the ID point. Gold is just sitting below $2,000 US per ounce. In November 2019, I actually put out a video where I said, invest in gold and silver because the fiat monetary system is in trouble, especially in South Africa. And at that time, a troy ounce of gold was worth 21,000 rand. Today, right now, well, last night, a troy ounce of gold, this is what, 3 years later, is worth 34,500 rand, because the gold price has gone up by about $600, but the big move has been in the collapse of the rand against the dollar. Do you want to just explain to people why gold could be a good hedge against...
there are benefits. There are a couple of reasons why you want to go buy gold, and some reasons why you don't want to have gold.
Mm-hmm.
One reason why you want to have gold is because of, the alternative usually between gold and the US dollar. Of course, you can pick other currencies as well, but it's usually a play between those two.
Yeah.
So if you think that the gold price, that the dollar is going to collapse, then buy gold. Okay? Because if you don't think the gold price is going to collapse, then instead of buying rands, just buy dollars. So one reason why you want to buy gold is that the gold price is going to collapse, or the dollar is going to collapse. Another reason why you want to buy gold is because you want to flee. And you put the gold in your pocket, you jump on a plane, and you go somewhere else, and you can sell your gold there. So that's another reason why you want to buy gold. That's a valid reason.
Mm-hmm.
Another reason why you want to invest in gold is because your grandmother gave you this nice piece of gold piece, and you want to keep it for sentimental reasons.
Mm-hmm.
That's a valid reason why you want to keep gold. Another reason why you want to buy gold is because you want to use it to seduce women. And that works well as well. So you buy a piece of gold and give it to women, and that
But
works.
these are all flippant reasons.
No, these are all the reasons why.
Well, I'll tell you.
But I can tell you why you don't want to buy gold.
Yeah, tell me.
Because if you buy a piece of gold, you put it in the safe, and you go there in a year's time. If you're lucky, it's still there, but it's not going to be more than one piece of gold. It can only be. It doesn't increase gold.
Okay.
It's still the same. You want to hedge. You use the gold as a hedge against inflation. But what about in a situation where inflation is much lower? What if you're a Swiss citizen, for example, and the Swiss franc has been appreciating against the US dollar?
Mm-hmm.
Then your gold, in gold terms, you would have been better if you kept Swiss francs.
What about the rand?
The rand is a badly managed currency and a badly managed South African currency.
If you're in South Africa,
But if I can give you,
good
I
option.
can give you a return, so the rule of thumb for me is that the rand loses about 5% against the US dollar, while the dollar itself usually, not now, but usually loses about 2% against gold annually because of inflation. So if you buy gold and do nothing, in nominal terms you will gain 7% or whatever annually, which is fine. But if I can get you an investment that gives you 10%, then it will be better to rather put that money in a 10% return instead of putting it into gold.
Okay, Dawie, I'm going to be the devil's advocate here, and then we're going directly to IDE. Okay? I'm going to be the devil's advocate. We've seen what happened with the SVG or SVB bank in recent days. If fiat money collapses, let's take a hypothetical situation where fiat money collapses and every other form of fiat money.
What does collapse mean?
Hang on, let me finish. There have been hundreds of fiat money systems. Zimbabwe Bank is one example. Okay?
Yes.
And there has never been a fiat money system that's actually survived more than 100 years. They've all fallen over.
That's
now, so let's say, for example, fiat money collapses globally. Gold and silver has always been money. Now, you've been talking about, to impress girls and if you get an heirloom and all this sort of stuff. Let me put this argument to you. If fiat money collapses, the value of gold and silver, because of supply and demand, and because it's real money, is going to go astronomical.
Yes.
And that is the reason. It's like prepping for when we run out of food, you have a stock of food so that you can eat when the shops are bare. So having gold and silver is actually prepping for a time when fiat money collapses.
If my aunt had bought, she would have been my uncle. Doesn't mean
we live in different times now.
You say that if Fiat money collapses, then gold price is going to go astronomical. But why will that happen?
Because fiat money has always collapsed.
Listen to my question.
Yeah.
So if I, for example, use 1 piece of gold, 1 ounce of gold to buy a cow, and now fiat money collapses, will I have to pay more for a cow than 1 ounce of gold?
You would be able to buy a whole herd of cattle with 1 ounce of gold.
No, that's not true.
Well, it's supply and demand.
If I pay $100 for 1 piece of gold, for example, and the fiat currency collapses, now I have to pay $1 million for 1 piece of gold. But I can still only exchange 1 piece of gold for
a cow. But it'll be barter. It'll be a barter system.
No, you don't follow me. The gold price will not go up. The value of fiat will go down.
Let me give you an example, and this is documented. After the World War I, when the German currency collapsed, you could buy a house with a gold sovereign. Now, before the currency collapsed,
no, that is completely incorrect what you're saying. That is untrue what you are saying.
It's not. It's true.
It is completely untrue what you are saying.
It's true.
No, that's not true. If you listen to my example, if you pay 1 piece of gold, 1 ounce of gold for a cow, and fiat collapses, now I need to pay $1 million or $20 million for 1 piece of gold, as an example, but I will still only be able to buy 1 cow with 1 piece of gold.
That's where I disagree, because the seller of the seller of the cow will be so desperate to have something that is money that he will pay, or he will accept giving a lot more for that.
No, the benefit of having something that keeps its value, like gold is supposed to be, is that relative to other stuff, except fiat money, but relative to other things, it maintains its value.
Well,
it's not going to increase in value.
I will have to show you the historical records where a gold sovereign bought houses in Germany.
Now, what happened there? The gold sovereign, because there were fixed exchange rates, as an example, the gold sovereign was used to pay off all these gazillions marks, German fiat money that became worthless. The house kept its value. Of course, houses and cows and things change their value, fluctuate in value over time. But there was not a case where you could buy a big house for 1 gold sovereign. That's not true. Okay. You could pay off your mark debt with 1 gold sovereign because the debt became worthless. But that's something different.
I'll have to show you what I'll send. I'll dig up the information and send it to you. Okay, let's get back to ID. You wanted to talk about ID.
Okay, the kids play on, and this is what I think is going to happen.
Yeah.
It's called non-fungible coins.
Yeah.
This is a wonderful opportunity. It's a wonderful new technology. So the kids play on these computer games that they have, and they create avatars.
Yeah.
Now, avatar is a little... In fact, I create avatar. I'm a cyclist. So I've got a big program I can go and show you. I get onto my exercise cycle and I run this program. I've got a big screen on the TV and then I ride, and I can ride anywhere in the world. I can ride in Paris or in the jungle or whatever. And on the screen,
you're riding.
I'm riding. I'm sitting on this exercise bike and I'm riding, and I can go and show you. I've got that. And then as I ride, and I gather more points, and I can exchange my points to buy a new helmet or new clothes or fancy wheels for my bicycle. So I built this individual with long hair in the wind or whatever. Okay? So I built this little image of myself on a fancy bicycle. But you have to work for it. You can't just get it, you have to get points for that. And that's me. So that's my little icon that I've created for myself on the specific bicycle program. The kids do exactly the same. They play computer games, and if I kill somebody else, I can get a sword, or I can pick up some virtual money and I can buy a shield, or I can have it nicely painted, or and they built these little avatars as well, and that became their
identity.
In a way, this little soldier. And in fact, what happens in practice is quite often kids pay with actual money to get somebody else's credit to buy a blue shield or a nice helmet or whatever. The point I want to make is that this little creature that I've created that's supposed to represent me, that thing can be represented by, and it is being represented by a specific or specific electronic code, because that's what it is. And inside this electronic code, it says this guy's got a helmet, this guy's got a shield, this guy's got a bicycle, an orange bicycle with fancy wheels, blah blah blah. And that piece of electronic information, I can claim that, and claiming that, and that thing becoming my property, and I can register that on the blockchain as a non-fungible coin, or then as an NFT, or as a token. NFT, non-fungible token.
Right.
Which is pretty much the same as Bitcoin.
Yeah.
But the difference is one Bitcoin is exactly the same as another Bitcoin, but this NFT is unique. That is mine. And that is the basis of future identity. How are you going to secure your future identity? Is that you can provide certain information about, and we can debate whether it's good or bad, but you can provide certain information about the picture that can include your picture. It can include maybe some medical information or whatever the case may be. But you are the owner of this piece of electronic information. You're the owner of this NFT, and you've got the password to this NFT. And as long as you're the owner of this NFT, you can take this NFT or this proof of your identity, and you can take that to the bank. And if the bank accepts that as your identity, they will accept that you are the owner of the bank account.
So you're about to trade money through that NFT?
You can, for example, eventually.
Wow.
So I can become this NFT of mine. I can link my wallet, my Bitcoin wallet, to that as well, for instance. And it becomes completely and totally secure. You can, for example, write a poem, or you can take a picture, and you convert that to an electronic format, and put that on an NFT as well, and you can sell it. And nobody can ever steal that from you because it's registered on the blockchain.
Wow. Well, have you heard of ChatGPT?
Yes.
Okay, I actually wrote in there, I did ChatGPT, and I wrote a poem for Scott Wilson, for myself. And after about 5 seconds, it came up with this poem, which described me perfectly. It was the most extraordinary thing.
I've used exactly the same. So I'm in grade 4. And I got this ChatGPT to write for them essays. In Afrikaans nogal. In Afrikaans. So this ChatGPT wrote an Afrikaans essay that they had to hand in as homework.
Yeah.
But I did declare that. I made it clear.
But that's scary shit. That's
it is amazing, wonderful stuff. It's
a good sign of AI.
I can remember 1969.
Yeah.
When the Americans sent somebody to the moon the first time. My grandparents were quite religious people. And I can remember this. I can remember 1969. And my grandmother, she was very, everybody was just wowed about somebody walking on the moon. And she came to me and she said, God will allow humankind to do so much and not more. And she thinks this is about it. Stepping on the moon,
that was Buzz Aldrin and Armstrong.
Yeah, it's not the end. There's always going to be something new, and that's part of this amazing thing that we call life.
Yeah.
ChatGPT and all this AI is going to make life even better than what it is today.
Now, I'm going to wrap this little discussion up because we've been going for nearly 2 hours, but it's always great chatting to you. Is there something you'd like to, as a message regarding the future of money, that you'd like to give to people?
It's not about the future of money only. It's about the future of humankind. And if you really want to know what's going to happen in the future, just stand back a little bit and see where we came from. Go back to 10,000, 20,000, 30, 100,000 years if you want to. Go back 100 years if you go. Don't go back to last year because it's too short a period. Things go up and down all the time. But if you stand back a little bit, you will see that this line of progression, this line of how our lives have been improving, that line has been going up. It's a bump now and again always, but it's been going up. And I can tell you, we are living in the best of times. And in 10 years' time, it will be even better. In 20 years' time, it will be even better. Yeah. And you can measure it in all sorts of things. You will see life expectancy will go up, literacy will go up, the environment's going to become better. Everything is improving. And that is where we are heading. We are heading to a better place.
Right.
And that there will be new technologies. There will be disruptive technologies. And there will be always conspiracy theories. And there will always be people trying to dominate us and politicians trying to take over. That's the nature of life. But the underlying trend is a trend of things getting better.
Yeah.
And that will continue.
Okay, fantastic. Now, I'm going to wrap this up. Dawie, thank you so much for joining me here. It's lovely to be face to face and, rather than across a Skype screen. And thank you for inviting us to your house. And
You're very much welcome. Very nice meeting you in person.
Yeah, fantastic. All right, mate. Bye for now.
All right, guys, that was part 2 of my discussion with Dawie Roodt. Please, I hope you can hear me this time around. Let me know. Just put 1 if you can hear me in the side chat, and put 2 if you can't hear me in the side chat. I did kind of fast track putting this all together tonight. Okay, guys, have a great evening, and I'm going to go out with, let me think. Last night I had Hier Bly Ek Boer. Tonight we might go out with Op Ons Rots. And don't forget Monday night. Geez, I'm having fun here, guys. Okay, here we go. On Monday night, I'm going to be having a live stream where I'll be talking about my trip to South Africa. And that's going to be really, really interesting. I'll be showing you quite a few videos of the highs and lows of the trip. And there weren't many lows. It was a really, really interesting experience, and I had a great time. Okay, you can hear me. That's great to hear. All right, guys, here comes Op Ons Rots. Have a great evening, and don't forget Monday night, we're going to be talking about my trip to South Africa, which finished on last Tuesday, and I do wish I was still in South Africa, but I've got to get loving life moving. We've got some big things coming up, as you will see later this year. Take care, guys. Have a great evening, and bye for now.
Ons loop hand aan hand op goue warm sand. So baie wat ek wil hê, so baie dit brand. Ek staan op my rots met golwe wat bots. Ons het geen vrees, want hy is in beheer. Ons sien al die planne van goddelose manne. Ons weet hulle gaan nie wen nie. Dis geskryf soos 'n duif. Ons sal wen, aanhou glo, want hy is in beheer. Waai sterk, dis kragte wat werk. Die gevoel in my hart, dis vrees wat wil brand. Ons is boere met trots, met my hand teen my bors. Ons ken geen vrees, want hy is in beheer. Ons sien al die planne van goddelose manne. Ons weet hulle gaan nie wen nie. Dis geskryf soos 'n duif. Ons sal wen, aanhou glo, want hy is in beheer. Ons sien wat sal ons nie steen. Kom slaan nog 'n keer. Ek is stil, want ek weet hy is in beheer. Ons sien al die planne van goddelose manne. Ons weet hy gaan nie wen nie. Dis geskryf soos 'n duif. Ons sal wen, aanhou glo, want hy is in beheer. Ons die